Hey, what's up YouTube? It's ICU, and today we're going to be unboxing the brand new 2018 redesigned 12.9-inch iPad Pro, which features an absolutely stunning design. It has a smaller form factor than that of its predecessor because Apple has now significantly reduced the bezels, and it features a liquid Retina display, which hints at rounded corners, similar to the iPhone XR, though of course this does have a higher pixel density. We'll get into that later, but also, I just wanted to let you guys know that we do have a ton of other content planned for today, including unboxing the brand new 2018 MacBook Air and Apple Pencil, which pairs nicely with either the 12.9-inch or the 11-inch iPad Pro models, the brand new ones. So be sure to give this video a huge thumbs up if you're a fan of Apple products, and stick around. Of course, click that subscribe button below next to the channel name if you have yet to. That way you'll be fully notified anytime we release new coverage. All right, let's go ahead and get into this unboxing. All right, so starting with the box itself, of course, the front has the iPad Pro's display featured prominently with not much else. And then it simply says iPad Pro on either side with an Apple logo on the top as well as the bottom. And the back simply confirms that this is in fact the 12.9-inch iPad Pro, Wi-Fi only, 64 gigabytes, so the base model, which starts at $1,000 before tax, which is absolutely insane. We'll talk about that later though. And now for the unboxing bit, we no longer need a knife. We can just use this conveniently placed plastic tab and pull it, which will actually start the unboxing process. You can see now the plastic just easily comes off, like so, to reveal the iPad sitting directly on top. This is a pretty tight fit here, so I'm just going to work the lid, and as you guys can see, there you have it, the absolutely massive iPad Pro, which if we grab the box over here, you can see is pretty much true to size. This is a huge tablet, just like its predecessor, but of course it does have a slightly smaller form factor now because we have that edge-to-edge display, or seemingly edge-to-edge. All right, so there is this little plastic tab right here at the bottom that we can use to just lift the iPad up and out of the box. I'm going to press the power button to boot it up, and we're going to set it off to the side, and we're going to return to the rest of the contents of the box. Now you can see here that below the iPad, it says designed by Apple in California, and this just contains a few things inside of it. First and foremost, on the front, we just have something that says iPad Pro. This is a quick start guide, and it just walks you through some of the basic steps to actually navigate on the iPad, because now, of course, it no longer has the home button. And we also have this little iPad info sheet, seemingly no Apple logo stickers. Oh, there we go. I thought maybe Apple did away with those with the iPad this year, but looks like they didn't. Here they are. And then below that, we have at the top a brand new charging brick. This is the first time we have a redesign in the charging brick for the iPad Pro, because this is the first iPad that no longer features Apple's proprietary connector. Instead of having either the old style pin connector or the lightning connector, which we've had for years now, we have USB Type-C. So here is the old power brick. Here's the new one. So we no longer have the folding prongs there. Instead, they just seemingly are always present, which I gotta say, I do like the folding prong style. It makes it much easier to travel with. We do have USB-C, though, of course, for the input, so that means it is reversible, which is nice. That's a good improvement. And I was just taking a look at some of the output stats here on both of these. It seems like this one will charge the iPad slightly faster. It's not exactly the fast charging that you'd get if you were to buy a bigger power adapter, like something that comes with Apple's newer MacBooks, but it should be slightly faster than charging with the old one. It looks like it can provide 3 amps of output at 5 volts versus 2.1 amps on the old style one. And then beneath that, because there is no lightning cable, we have a USB-C to USB-C cable. You plug one end into the iPad and the other end into this guy. And of course, because it is reversible, you can plug it in like that. You can also pull it out and plug it in the other way. Cool stuff. Apple is finally adopting the USB-C standard in an iOS device for the first time ever. So let's go ahead and set all this off to the side, and we're going to return to the start of this video. All right, so here we go, guys. The fully redesigned iPad Pro featuring an iPhone XS redesign. It's not quite as bezel-less, so to speak, as the iPhone X or XS or even XS Max, but you can see that it is significantly improved over its predecessor and really any iPad that has come before. Now, I was just thinking about it. It might not make as much sense to have fully reduced bezels on the iPad because if you're holding it like so, of course, it does have to have some pretty good palm rejection because the side of my hand does overlap on the screen a good bit there. So this is pretty much as full screen as we're going to get on the iPad for a while, I think. And it does feature all of the same gestures as the iPhone X and XS, meaning you can just swipe up to go home and you swipe and hold to get into multitasking. You can swipe left or right on that little bar at the bottom to go back and forth between recently opened applications. And I'm just thinking about this. I don't think I'm going to keep this iPad, but in the event that I do, I want to leave this protective plastic on just until I'm able to get a screen protector because, you know, I'm weird like that. But let's take a look at the rest of the design. We do have a camera bulge on the back, a pretty significant one. You can see there. This thing is super, super thin though. And this is where the Apple Pencil connects to magnetically, which is super cool. I'm going to be doing a video on that shortly, so stay tuned. Besides that, it just has an Apple logo on the back. It says iPad toward the bottom, and we have those accessory pins now that have moved to the bottom of the iPad on the back. So you can connect things like the Smart Folio keyboard to it. And yeah, guys, overall, I'm really digging the super thin design of the iPad this time around. And we have the True Depth camera system up at the top with Face ID for biometric unlocking and security purposes. I'm just going to go through the setup of this iPad really quick, and I'm going to be right back. All right, so I wanted to come back for just a second because we are here inside of the setup screen, transferring settings from my iPhone to the iPad, and we now have the prompt to set up Face ID. So I'm going to tap on continue, and this screen looks almost identical to what we have on the iPhone XS, XS Max, 10, and even 10R. But the one difference here, because Face ID will work in all orientations for the iPad Pro, what happens when we go ahead and put it into landscape? It tells us for the initial setup that we actually have to sign up with Face ID in portrait mode. And then from there, it will work in all orientations so long as you're not accidentally covering it. And if you do, it will actually tell you on the device that you're covering it, or if you have it on the bottom like so, because you can use the iPad in all orientations now, it'll tell you to look down at the sensor, which is some pretty cool stuff. Unfortunately, because I've made the decision to hold off until I get a screen protector for it, I'm not going to be able to set it up. You can see when I tap on get started, it's just a blurry mess because this is frosted plastic here. So I'm going to skip this for now. One other thing during the setup that actually was answered that I've been wondering about is since now we no longer have a home button and we don't have a side button really like we do on the iPhone X style devices, how do you activate Siri as far as a physical press or activation is concerned? Well, according to this animation, you actually use the top button, which has always been the lock and power button, which now functions in a similar fashion as the iPhone X style devices. So pretty interesting stuff there. All right, so here we are, guys. I have 3 quick things that I want to run through before we actually wrap this video up. First, I want to show you the navigation actions, which are identical to those introduced by the iPhone X, but I also wanted to run through some Geekbench tests here so I can show you guys the raw computing performance of this iPad and talk about that a little bit. And I also jankily cut the plastic off of the bottom here. Let's see if we can get the camera to focus. I cut it off so we could run through some USB Type-C tests. I just wanted to connect a couple things and show you guys that that actually is a pretty powerful port here on the iPad Pro 2018 redesign. So the navigation actions, again, are familiar to those who are familiar with the iPhone 10. Let's go ahead and set this over a little bit. So just opening an app is obviously exactly the same, but now if you swipe up, you start to get a dock. And that dock will stay there if you just leave it like so. But if you continue the swipe like this, it puts you into multitasking. And if you continue a little bit more, it puts you to the home screen. So it's very much just one simple gesture to do all three of those, which can be a little confusing at first. It is a learning curve, but you can see you can easily go home just by the gravity of your gesture. So if you just do it quick like so, boom, you're on the home screen just like that. And if you kind of just flick it, it's exactly the same thing. So again, that gravity aspect comes into play there. Or if you want to go slowly, again, you can go all the way to the home screen just like that by doing a longer swipe. So it does take some getting used to if you are not familiar with it. And then if you just proceed slowly, again, you'll get things like the dock. Or if you pull up and pause and let go, then boom, you're inside of multitasking. You can also switch back and forth between your recently opened applications, just like this. And you can then access the dock and then snap something over to the other side. So you can see here, if we get it to work, let's actually go inside of Safari and then do that. Boom, you can see now we're inside of the snapped view. And of course, if we wanted to switch over to settings again, we can switch back and it maintains that snapped view. And of course, if we were to rotate it, it would also just rotate like so. And we could have two apps side by side, split 50%. And then we can actually pop something over the top of that if we wanted to. You can see we can pop music and then we can just swipe it away or pull it back. So very convenient. Essentially, you can have three things going on at a time and you can actually interact with the app that is in the background as well as the one that's in the foreground. So some pretty cool stuff, especially since you can drag and drop things as well between different applications. So that's pretty much the extent of the power userness of the iPad, as I like to call it, or its true compute capabilities. We're going to talk about that after we run through this Geekbench test. So let's go ahead and do that now. Just run benchmark, and I'm going to skip ahead to when this is complete. All right, so here we go. We have the scores right here. For those of you who are unfamiliar with benchmark scores, essentially they're a numeric representation of a computer's cumulative computing capabilities. We have a single core score of 50, 61, and a multi-core score of, this is just insane, 16,476. This processor in this iPad is faster than 92% of all laptops sold last month. Yet, unfortunately, because of the limitations and restrictions of iOS, it can't do what 92% of all other laptops can do. It's just so frustrating to have this kind of power and to be so limited by iOS. Again, I pretty much highlighted the extent of what you can really do with an iPad, simply dragging things back and forth between applications and doing split view. Of course, we want more. Those of us who are buying the iPad Pro aren't spending anywhere from $799 for the smaller version or $999 for the larger version and up to simply put applications in multitasking view. We want more than that. Ideally, something like a full-fledged or maybe even a watered-down version of Mac OS running on this kind of hardware would be fantastic. I want this to replace my MacBook. I don't want to actually have this and MacBook. There just isn't enough of a reason. Apple really needs to get innovating. Hopefully they do so with iOS 13. Fingers crossed. I don't really see it coming anytime soon though, but we can always hold out for iOS 13, which should be unveiled June 2019. Now let's talk quickly about USB-C because this is turning into a super long video. Now USB-C is capable of sending so much data. It can send everything from regular to display information to power both ways, up and down. So you can use it to charge, but you can also use this guy as a power bank, so to speak, to charge any one of your other devices. Even if it isn't USB-C, if you do have a cable that is, let's say, USB-C to Lightning, you can connect it and charge your iPhone, for instance, or if you have an adapter. So you can do something like this, for instance, and charge something like a Nintendo Switch. However, because the iPad actually has less charge than the Nintendo Switch, which has 100%, it has seemingly started drawing power from the Switch and putting it into the iPad. You can see here that the iPad says we are charging. If we would ever get focused, there we go. It says the iPad is charging, which is honestly pretty hysterical. But we should be able to do something like charge AirPods, for instance. So let me go ahead and grab a dongle here. And now what we're going to do is take this USB Type-C dongle and we're going to connect it to a regular USB Type-A to Lightning cable. And we can plug in the AirPods and plug it in to the iPad, and it should actually start charging the AirPod case. So I'm going to connect the iPad first. It should be indicated by the little light here that now it's charging. You can see that orange indicator shows that the AirPod case is now charging. That's so cool. So if you run out of charge on your AirPods and the case dies, you can charge them just like that. You could also do something exactly like this to charge your iPhone. Or if you just have a USB-C to Lightning cable, then you don't need the adapter. But because I don't, the adapter works just fine. And you can connect a slew of other accessories. Pretty much the only thing you can't do is connect external storage, but you can connect things like wired keyboards, basically cameras, anything you can think of, and also other accessories that have third-party app support will work as well, which is fantastic. So that in combination with the multitasking is really the only thing that the iPad Pro can do that's special versus other iPads. And in fact, other older iPads can also do the same things as far as multitasking goes, just not quite as fluid and responsive. So is this thing really worth it? What do you guys think? Let me know down below in the comment section. I'm still on the fence. I love the form factor, but the price is just way too high for what little it actually can do. Again, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and until next time, this is ICU signing out.